Hello, blessed be. It is High Priestess Jamila. Um, so I wanted to come and talk about a subject that has been long overdue, and just to come and talk a little bit about religious abuse, okay, or even spiritual abuse. I think that the most common that affects a lot of you guys is religious trauma and abuse, though. And the reason I say that is because most of us grew up where religion was normalized a lot, maybe forced, and maybe some of the things that were said to us as children possibly was not age appropriate to be saying to a small child um, about religion or about God or about spirit. And then, of course, there are some of you out there that had supernatural things happening around you, and even had noticeable spiritual gifts. The saying, kids say the darndest things, and kids very early on, especially spiritual children, especially children that have had previous lives, children that are coming back and being reincarnated, can really sometimes say things or either display certain things from a small child that may be confusing or scary or either just not tolerated by your caregivers. In fact, one of like the most heartbreaking things that we even hear about in the news today is young children being harmed viciously during these exorcisms and things of that nature, and little small children being accused of being possessed by the devil. I actually provide spiritual support and services for those that have been through spiritual abuse and trauma, or religious abuse, especially in trauma. Religious abuse can go from mild to severe. But even the mildest cases, when their mind is developing, especially if you are a small child, can produce mental illnesses in the future. And then if that spiritual or religious abuse was okay, even if when the religious or spiritual abuse was severe, this can cause so many deep psychological wounds as well as spiritual wounds as well. So being that I am a practicing witch and a healer, I don't just look at it from a mental health perspective, because I am not a doctor. I am not a psychologist. I am not. In fact, there are some people that I do refer to a psychologist or a therapist, and those people are still able to receive spiritual services from me at that time that they're doing that at the same time. So I think the main aspect of it is, let's talk about supernatural experiences, hauntings, things of that nature. and you being a small child and essentially being blamed for those energies coming in. Now, there are a lot of cases where spirits do come attached to small children. And I think that the one thing that is probably the hardest is certain situations in your family home to where nobody in the house knew how to really handle that situation. And then maybe when it was handled more from an abusive perspective versus those situations being handled by someone who is a professional, which is understandable. People tend to feel more comfortable with a preacher or a priest praying over their child. They do. I don't exactly know why that is, but there's a lot of people that literally feel that way. Even if the prayer is not working, or even if it's abusive, or it's something that is being more so medically driven as a whole instead of handling the spiritual aspect, more so oppressing or suppressing the situation, can end up happening usually. Those of you that show signs of spiritual gifts very early on, in particular, have become targets for this, especially if you were born with these gifts and the people in your family made a mockery of that, or singled you out, or picked on you, which is more commonly known as being like the black sheep of the family, which can cause so many deep wounds that many of those people that go through that, they have problems later on in life, well into their adulthood. And a lot of times it is very common for this to just be accepted, and people assume that there is nothing that can be done about it. And this is something that I feel very passionate about, that I do not agree with. I think that what's very common in people that especially are mediums or psychics, or even empaths, is that they are labeled as quote unquote crazy, or a problem child, or a bad kid, or a bad child. And I think that this is extremely inappropriate, especially being that children react to their environment. And especially if you are sensitive to spiritual energy or even spirits, and you're sensing this, but then and then even some cases other people will be superstitious or sensing this, but because you have shown, if you have shown signs that you are able to sense these energies, then people have a tendency to sort of start to play the blame game, even though they may be sensing that same thing. It's a lot more easier for some people to be in denial about it, and that within itself can be traumatizing to a child. And then later on in life, you can go on to have issues, especially if you were, very smart or advanced for your age. and you were able to communicate these things to people. And then there has been incidences of people even having obvious jealousy within your household because of that ability. And I think that that's probably one of the things, the jealousy factor of it, is one of the things that people probably oppress or suppress in their memory more than anything, is when there are those periods of the full moon, the new moon, and things are sort of out of control, and spiritual activity definitely picks up during those times. And growing up, you were there for many moons, and instead of the situation being handled properly, it was an encouragement of something else, or to handle it differently, and it didn't help. It actually possibly made things worse. Growing up in that kind of environment, especially for an empath, a healer, a baby shaman, a baby witch, a baby warlock, etc., can really, really, really be very traumatic, because nobody understood you. Nobody took the time to understand you. And the way that it was handled was mainly with either put downs, insults, or maybe even flat out abuse. So the spiritual services that I provide, especially when there's that deep type of issue that goes way back to even when you were an infant, because I have taken care of not only my own children, but I have also taken care of other people's children. And there's certain things that I will notice about the energy connected to that child, or either that child's certain behaviors of children. I know early on that they are very spiritually gifted. That kind of dealing with that kind of client, it's usually not something that can be a one and done. It's usually not something that can be done overnight. It's something that may take a little while to work through, especially if currently as an adult you are having spiritual issues, especially depending on what's happening within your family, or what's happening just period in life, whatever you ran into. So on top of the spiritual issues that you're dealing with currently as a result of either neglect of that issue, or just flat out denial, you have to deal with the issues that you're dealing with as an adult, as well as go back to the childhood very often to work through those issues. And so every client that I have, they may want an instant fix, and it just doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. There are certain advances in understanding and knowledge that I have that can make those things easier, make them go by faster. But when you're working through that issue of that trauma of what went on and whatever it was, that can take time. And then, of course, I charge for my services. So there are some people out there who are providing spiritual services to people who will advise clients. They will ill advise clients. I've heard some people out there saying, well, if it's a certain, if it's an issue, don't keep paying the spiritualist to do the work for you. But if you're receiving spiritual counseling, if you're receiving coaching, if you are receiving regular cleanses, because some of you guys are working through 20, 30, or even 40 or 50 years of trauma, then that stuff can't, you charge a fee. That's what I do. I charge a fee for the particular work that I'm doing. So that can be very difficult, wrapping people's heads around that. So that's actually very incorrect. I think that people should take that into consideration when you are talking about spiritual work, because I can tell you right now that at least 70% of my cases have been a long-term work through the situation type of situation. It's not just, oh, I'm going to light a candle and I can fix that for you after one time. Because some of the stuff that you've been through as a child, it can block your money, it can block your love life, it can block your health. It can cause a lot of problems in your life that is not going to necessarily be an overnight fix, So there's all sorts of scenarios and situations. A lot of people think that, you go to a witch and things are fixed overnight. Now, I have been doing work for people, healing work, actually, because that's a part of healing work, as far as where we categorize it. I've been doing it for almost 10 years now, professionally, which is at my own small business or company called Divine Services Apothecary. And I can honestly say that even for me, because as a witch, I actually suffered religious abuse, that I realized that even in my 40s, I was still healing from. So, and I've been working on self as well for years, and it's not an overnight fix. And so this is the reason why one of the options that I offer is that empowerment when you're ready, which is classes. However, the one thing that is important is, the readings a lot of times are spiritual coaching, spiritual counseling. And it really uncovers a lot of things that people are avoiding, that they shouldn't be avoiding, because sometimes in order to fix something as an adult, you have to go back to the childhood and look at that. So it can be very confusing for people, because there's a lot of people that think that spiritual healing, especially when it comes to abuse and trauma, they think that it's something that can just, a witch can say abracadabra and everything is okay. And it's not always the case. So, you just have to be patient with yourself. And then also, make sure that you are listening to, first of all, make sure that you're going to somebody that you can trust, but then also making sure that you are actually listening to the healer or either the witch that you are going to. There are not, there's a lot of witches out there working, and a lot of them do not provide those types of services. I am one that does, and I can tell you that it gets frustrating sometimes, because what people are looking for, again, is the expectation of, well, just cast a spell on me and fix me. And that's not always the case, because, this is the reason why a lot of us suggest that shadow work, it's necessary. It's not the type of situation where we can just cast a spell. In fact, it's not even really a spell that is involved. And so, that can be one of the difficult things to understand and to break down, which is why I'm actually making this video right now so that people can get a better understanding. So when it comes to religious trauma, we are all taught that ultimately, even though that particular religion does not agree with you, jive with you, you don't feel comfortable with it, this is whether or not you are, or this is whether or not you have been spiritually or religiously abused or not. But we're taught ultimately that is what you're supposed to go back to. And that's the only way. And I don't agree with that personally, myself, as well as professionally, as well as spiritually. I don't believe in that. And so it can be extremely difficult for someone that's trying to heal from religious trauma, and you're being told to go back to the same religion that traumatized you in the first place. So that's another hurdle that even as a healer that I have had to face. And it's almost like reverting back, but it's not recommended by myself at all. I feel that people should not be so accepting and normalizing any type of childhood abuse or trauma, but in particular when it comes to religious abuse and trauma. People, they want to normalize it, so I don't think that that's healthy at all. So that's pretty much what I wanted to speak about. A few of the services that I offer for that would be, of course, readings, and then also the cleanses, sometimes curse reversals, uncrossings, are needed, and then as well as healing work can be offered. So it is a very sensitive topic, but it is one that I have been through, and I know a lot about it, being that I am a witch, and suffered early trauma from a babysitter, actually. In particular, I know this sounds cliche, Halloween, and it was something that I still remember. And do I agree with your parents leaving their spiritually gifted children with religious people? No, I don't. It happens. And typically there's some kind of trauma that happens. So just to wrap this up, the door is open. My door is open for those of you who are interested in those spiritual healing services, because it does tend to affect a lot of people. And a lot of people are taught to not acknowledge it, which I think is very wrong. I think you should acknowledge it. So you are more than welcome to reach out to me for confidential work, as well as spiritual coaching and rituals, spells, and even classes. Okay. I also do offer packs, which is something that a lot of people that have been religiously abused or spiritually abused. And I think that what people need to focus on is listening to your heart, listening to your soul, listening to your mind, and not just listening to somebody that is programmed to tell you the same thing. Because what's good for one person is not going to be good for the next person. Okay? All right. That is it. If you guys have any questions, you are more than welcome to reach out to me. Also, you can visit divineservicesapothecary.com to schedule either a reading or a consultation. There's a few different types of consultations on the website. There's the Left Hand Path, and then there's also my Witch's Musing 2-hour option that I offer, which is where those of you that know that you're a witch, but you have not practiced, or either you've been through a lot of shaming because of it, and so that particular option is available along with the general consultation and readings are available on the website. Okay. And then I also do accept Cashapp, Venmo, and Zelle. All right. Okay. Hugs to you guys, and make sure that you guys like, subscribe. You can also share this, and I will see y'all later. Blessed be.